My boyfriend of 5 years took my inheritance money for investment opportunities, then ghosted me for 3 months until he needed more money. So I did this when he showed up at my door with flowers, and now he's living with his parents. Throw away for obvious reasons, but I need to get this out somewhere. I, female, 27, still can't believe I'm even typing this. I keep hoping I'll wake up and this entire nightmare will be over. But it's been 3 months, and I'm finally accepting that the man I loved for 5 years has completely destroyed my life. So I met Kyle, male, 30, at my friend Jess's housewarming party back when I was finishing my design degree. He was so charming, and we just clicked immediately. He had this way of making me feel like the most interesting person in any room. We've been together for 5 years, and everything seemed good. Like, we had our issues, who doesn't, but nothing major. He works in business development consulting, whatever that actually means. He always explained it in these really complicated terms, and I kind of just nodded along. His career was always kind of up and down. He'd be super successful for a while, and then hit these random setbacks he blamed on industry volatility or whatever. I should probably back up a bit. My grandmother passed away 3 months ago. She basically raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 11. She was everything to me. I'm already crying typing this. Ugh. Anyway, she left me her life savings, $175,000. She worked as a nurse her entire life and saved every penny she could. This wasn't just money to me, you know. It was her life and her love for me. When she first got sick, Kyle was actually really amazing. He drove me to the hospital every day, brought me food when I forgot to eat, and was just there. That's one reason this is so confusing and devastating. How could someone who held me while I sobbed after she died just do this? So about the money, I put it in a high-yield savings account at first. I was planning to use it for a house down payment eventually, and maybe upgrade my design equipment. I work as a graphic designer at a marketing agency. Been there about 4 years after bouncing around freelance jobs for a while. At first, Kyle was super supportive of my plans. He even built me this amazing home office in his spare bedroom with the perfect desk setup. But then, he started casually mentioning these investment opportunities he was hearing about through his business network. He would bring up companies that were supposedly about to take off or development projects with huge returns. It was so gradual, I didn't even notice what was happening. Next thing I know, he's showing me all these professional-looking documents with graphs and projections. He even introduced me to this guy Donald, who wore these expensive suits and talked about market trends in a way that made it sound like he definitely knew what he was talking about. My best friend Katie tried to warn me. She's never really liked Kyle. To be fair, she's been super suspicious of men ever since her ex cheated on her with her roommate like 2 years ago. She got into this really awkward argument with Kyle at my birthday dinner last year because she caught him texting under the table and called him out on it. He said it was work stuff, but things have been weird between them ever since. When I told Katie about Kyle's investment ideas, she immediately told me not to do it. She said it sounded fishy and asked if I'd met any of these business partners besides Donald. I hadn't. Or if I'd researched the companies myself. I hadn't. But I just thought she was being overprotective and paranoid because of her own bad experiences. I really thought I was being smart about this, you know? Kyle has always seemed good with money. He drives this old Honda, even though he loves luxury cars, and he's always calculating the best deals on everything. He can spend an hour comparing prices on freaking toilet paper. So I trusted his financial judgment. After about 6 weeks of him showing me potential returns and talking about our future home and how we could even start our own business together, I agreed to let him invest $120,000 of my inheritance. The day I transferred the money is burned into my brain forever. I questioned Kyle about the investments, asking if he was absolutely sure about them and suggesting we start with a smaller amount. He insisted the returns were practically guaranteed and showed me more documents. When I mentioned how hard my grandmother had worked for that money, he said that's exactly why we should make it grow instead of letting it sit in a low-interest account. He claimed she would want me to secure my future. I had a bad feeling, but I ignored it. Why did I ignore it? I logged into my account and made the transfer while he stood behind me. Then he hugged me and said this was the beginning of our dream future together. Everything seemed fine for about a week. He was super attentive and excited, constantly checking his phone for updates from partners. Then suddenly, his texts got less frequent. He had all these vague excuses about meetings running late. And then, nothing. Complete silence. After 10 days of no response, I was in full panic mode. I called all his friends. I checked hospitals. I went to all his usual spots. I even filed a missing persons report, but the police didn't seem concerned because his landlord confirmed he'd moved out voluntarily. That's right, when I went to his apartment, everything was gone. The landlord said Kyle had given notice weeks ago, before he even took my money. I literally collapsed in the hallway outside his apartment. A neighbor had to help me up. I contacted Kyle's parents, Ralph and Elizabeth. They live in this fancy neighborhood across town. Kyle always complained they never supported his entrepreneurial ambitions and preferred his brother, who became a doctor. They claimed they hadn't heard from him, but seemed super weird about it. When I mentioned the investments, Elizabeth literally changed the subject to ask about my cats. Who does that? The police basically said, "Too bad, so sad. Since I willingly transferred the money for investments, it's a civil matter, not criminal fraud." I talked to a lawyer who told me to document everything and prepare for a potential lawsuit, but recovery would be difficult without knowing where Kyle is. Oh, and just to make everything worse, I discovered our shared account. We had about $3,500 saved for a vacation, has been completely emptied. And I found hidden credit card statements in a folder he left behind showing tons of online gambling transactions dating back over a year. Was our entire 5-year relationship just a long con? Did he target me because I mentioned my grandmother was wealthy? Was he just waiting for her to die so he could take her money? I feel so stupid and used and broken. I keep replaying every moment of our relationship in my head, trying to find the signs I missed. Was anything real? Did he ever actually love me? How do I even begin to process this level of betrayal? It's not even just about the money, though losing $120,000 is devastating and I have no idea how I'll ever recover financially. It's that the person I trusted most in the world, who I thought would be my husband someday, who held me when I cried over my grandmother, was just using me this entire time. I don't know what I'm looking for here. Advice, support, someone to tell me I'm not the biggest idiot on the planet. Has anyone ever been through something like this? Is there any chance of getting my money back? Edit. Thank you all for the supportive comments. To answer the questions about whether we lived together, no, we kept separate places because he claimed he was allergic to my 2 cats, though he stayed at my place most nights. Now I'm wondering if the allergy was just another lie so he could maintain his own place to plan his escape. Edit 2. Several people have asked if I have copies of the investment documents. Yes, I have everything he showed me, but my lawyer says they look completely fabricated. The companies don't exist, at least not under the names in the documents. Edit 3. For those saying I should check his social media, already tried that. All his accounts have been deactivated. His phone goes straight to voicemail. It's like he completely disappeared. Edit 4. A lot of you are asking if there were red flags I missed. Honestly, looking back, there were so many. He was always vague about his work. He never introduced me to coworkers, claimed his work was mostly remote. He would get defensive whenever I asked specific questions about his business. God, I feel so stupid. Now for the first update. First, thank you all so much for your support on my last post. The comments and messages really helped me feel less alone during this nightmare. It's been about a month since I posted. Feels like a freaking year though. And I've been trying to pick up the pieces while dealing with both the financial and emotional fallout of Kyle's disappearance. I honestly didn't expect to be posting an update like this. I figured my story would end with me never seeing Kyle or my money again, but apparently the universe wasn't done crapping on my life yet. These past few weeks have been a blur of survival mode. I've been taking on any freelance design project I can find. Like, seriously, I designed a logo for my neighbor's dog walking business at 2 a.m. last Wednesday. I had to use most of what was left of my inheritance, around $55, to cover rent for the next few months, and to pay off some credit card debt Kyle conveniently left behind in both our names. So that's fun. I started seeing a therapist who specializes in betrayal trauma. She's been helping me process everything and not blame myself. I also joined this financial recovery support group that meets on Thursdays. Turns out there are a lot of people who've been financially screwed over by partners. Hearing their stories makes me feel less stupid, but also like, What is wrong with people? So, about 2 weeks after my last post, I was cleaning out the spare closet, mostly just to keep busy, when I found his old laptop shoved behind some winter coats. It was actually a Christmas gift from me 2 years ago. I saved for months to buy it because he said he needed that specific high-end model for his business presentations. And now I'm sitting here wondering why a supposedly successful consultant couldn't afford his own damn equipment. God, I was so blind. Anyway, I figured there might be some clue about where he went, so I opened it up. The password was still the same. My cat's names combined with his birth year. Real secure. Kyle. What I found made me literally throw up in my bathroom trash can. There were dozens of accounts for online casinos and sports betting sites. Like, so many. And emails about loans and payment plans and final notices going back years. From what I could piece together, he owed nearly $90,000 to various gambling sites and probably loan sharks too. There were these super threatening emails from someone called Big D, real creative, about consequences if payments weren't made by certain dates. I just sat on my bathroom floor for like an hour trying to process that the man I loved, who I thought I knew, had this whole secret life I knew nothing about for 5 years. How do you hide something that big for that long? After finding the laptop, I decided to try Kyle's parents again. I'd called Ralph and Elizabeth like a dozen times since Kyle disappeared, but they always seemed weird and evasive. This time I just showed up at their house. I know, kind of dramatic, but I was done with the beast. At first, they gave me the same runaround, but I mentioned finding Kyle's laptop, and suddenly Elizabeth started crying. They finally invited me in and told me everything. Turns out, Kyle has had a gambling addiction since college. He actually lost his scholarship because his grades tanked when he got hooked on poker. He always told me he dropped out to pursue entrepreneurial opportunities, another lie to add to the pile. His parents have bailed him out multiple times over the years. About 3 years ago, which would have been 2 years into our relationship, they had to pay off some loan shark because Kyle was getting threatened. And get this, about 2 years ago, he stole his mom's family jewelry, like her grandmother's pieces, and pawned them to cover gambling debts. That's when they finally cut him off financially. Elizabeth showed me pictures of the jewelry. It was beautiful, irreplaceable family jewelry. I remembered Kyle telling me his mom was irrationally mad at him around that time and wouldn't speak to him for months. He made her sound like the unreasonable one. I literally can't even process the level of manipulation. The worst part, they never thought to warn me. When I asked why, Ralph said they thought Kyle had finally gotten help and was doing better. Elizabeth admitted they were just relieved someone else was taking care of him instead of them. Thanks a lot. Looking back, there were so many signs that I completely missed or ignored. I don't know. His random disappearances during big sporting events that he'd explain away as networking opportunities. The way he'd sometimes be flush with cash and other times claim his clients were late with payments. All those phone calls he'd take in another room or outside because it was sensitive business information. I remember one weekend before March Madness, Kyle spent literally the entire weekend analyzing basketball teams and creating these elaborate spreadsheets. I thought it showed how smart and detail-oriented he was. I actually bragged to my friends about his analytical mind. Meanwhile, he was just figuring out where to place his bets. I feel so stupid. Even his mood swings make sense now. He'd be ecstatic one day, probably after winning, and then completely depressed and irritable the next, after losing. I just chalked it up to the stress of his consulting work. How did I miss all of this? After talking with Kyle's parents, I got serious about legal action. I filed a civil case with documentation of the money transfer and all our texts and emails about these supposed investments. My lawyer says it's a solid case of fraud, but the problem is finding Kyle and then actually getting money from someone who probably has none. I've been working with this detective named June who specializes in financial crimes. She's been amazing. She even gave me her personal cell number and checks in regularly. She said cases like mine are sadly common, but the fact that I have so much documentation improves my chances. I also installed security cameras at my apartment on my lawyer's advice, which turned out to be weirdly prophetic, as you'll see in a minute. So here's where things get wild. Last night, around 8 p.m., there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I checked the security camera feed on my phone. It was Kyle, standing there with a bouquet of stargazer lilies, my favorite flowers, which somehow makes this all more disturbing. Like, you remembered my favorite flowers, but still stole my dead grandmother's money. I literally froze. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. For a second, I thought about not answering, but then I realized this might be my only chance to get answers, and maybe my money. So I opened the door. Kyle looked thinner than when I last saw him. He had this nervous smile and immediately launched into what felt like a rehearsed speech. Kyle showed up with flowers, trying to apologize. When I let him in, keeping the door open, he started talking about having a mental breakdown and needing to find himself. He kept avoiding my direct questions about where my inheritance money went. When I pushed him, he claimed the investments didn't work out, but that he had good intentions. He got defensive when I asked for specifics, talking about complex market factors, and claimed he needed our joint account money for living expenses while he was gone. The whole time he was talking, I was thinking about all the gambling debts I'd found and wondering if anything he was saying was true. Then suddenly, his whole mood changed. He got all excited and showed me some investment prospectus on his phone, claiming this was a guaranteed opportunity to make back all the money and more. He wanted $20,000 from me by tomorrow for this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Throughout his pitch, he kept switching between guilt-tripping me, making huge promises, and making subtle threats about how these investors have connections everywhere. I was literally in shock. Like, is this real life? Is this actually happening right now? When I didn't immediately agree, Kyle suggested I think about it overnight and said he would come back tonight in a few hours for my answer. Then he left the flowers on my coffee table, kissed me on the cheek like we were a normal couple having a minor disagreement, and just left. I stood in my living room for like 5 minutes trying to process what had just happened. As soon as my brain started working again, I called my lawyer, then Detective June, then Kyle's parents to let them know he's back in town. My lawyer walked me through setting up additional recording devices, which is legal in my state as long as I'm part of the conversation. I spent most of the night developing a confrontation strategy with my lawyer's guidance. We prepared legal documents for Kyle to sign if there's any chance of getting some of my money back. Katie came over early this morning to help me prepare mentally. We went through different scenarios of how Kyle might react when he realizes I'm not giving him more money. Katie wanted to hide in my bedroom closet with a baseball bat just in case, but we agreed that probably wouldn't help the legal situation, lol. The weirdest thing, I feel strangely calm. For the first time in months, I feel like I'm in control instead of being manipulated by Kyle. Maybe it's shock, or maybe it's finally seeing him for what he really is, a pathological liar with a gambling addiction who was willing to steal from the woman he supposedly loved. Kyle is supposed to come back in about 3 hours for my answer about his investment opportunity. I've got everything set up, recording devices, paperwork ready, and Detective June on standby. I'm nervous, but also determined. I need to stand my ground and not let him manipulate me. I'll update after the confrontation. Wish me luck, Reddit. I might need it. Edit. Some people are asking if I'm safe having Kyle come to my apartment. Yes, Detective June is going to be parked outside, and I have a panic button app that will immediately alert her if needed. Katie will also be on standby at a coffee shop down the street. Edit 2. To clarify, no, I am absolutely not giving him any more money. The answer he's getting is a whole lot of legal consequences. Edit 3. For those asking if I have proof he actually gambled away my inheritance. Not directly, but his parents confirmed his pattern of taking money for investments and using it for gambling in the past. Plus, the timing of the large deposits into his account and subsequent withdrawals to known gambling sites is pretty damning. Edit 4. Oh my frickin' God, people stop telling me to forgive him because addiction is a disease. I know addiction is a disease. That doesn't mean I have to give him more money, or that I should just forget about the $120K he stole. What is wrong with some of you? Now for the second update. It's been 2 weeks since everything went down with Kyle, and I guess I'm finally ready to talk about what happened. Thanks for all the support on my last post, by the way. Reading your comments helped keep me grounded when I was basically spiraling. So quick recap for anyone who missed it, though you can check my post history for the full saga. My boyfriend of 5 years disappeared with $120,000 of my inheritance money that my grandmother left me when she died. After 3 months of radio silence, He randomly showed up at my door, asking for another $20,000 for some new investment opportunity, which was obviously bullshit. The day of the big confrontation was really strange. I spent the morning going over the plan with my lawyer and Detective June. We set up recording devices in my apartment, which is legal in my state as long as I'm part of the conversation, and went through all the questions I should ask to get Kyle to admit what he did with my money. I almost backed out before he was supposed to arrive. I found this old photo of Kyle and me from our trip to the coast 3 years ago. He had surprised me with tickets to see my favorite band, and I remember feeling so happy. I just sat on my bedroom floor crying, wondering if I could actually go through with confronting him. My best friend Katie came over early that morning with cinnamon rolls from a bakery I love. She helped me rehearse what I wanted to say and reminded me to stay calm no matter what Kyle tried. She left before Kyle arrived because we thought having her there might complicate things. Kyle showed up exactly on time. He was wearing a gray suit that I actually helped him pick out for job interviews, and he brought me my coffee order, an oat milk latte with an extra shot and cinnamon. It was weird that he remembered my coffee order but still stole my money. Here's basically how it went down. Kyle came in looking confident. He asked if I'd thought about his amazing investment opportunity. I told him I had some questions first. He said he was happy to clear up anything I was confused about. I asked him to explain what happened to my original $120s in dollars. He looked uncomfortable and gave vague answers about investments not working out and market factors. When I pressed him for details, he kept using technical sounding but empty explanations. I asked to see documentation of where my money went. He claimed all the paperwork was at his office, but promised to show me later. Then I directly asked if he used the money for gambling debts. His face completely changed. He got defensive and couldn't believe I would suggest that, but his eyes were panicky the whole time. I told him I found his laptop with all the evidence of his gambling. He went completely still for several seconds. I just waited, maintaining eye contact even though my heart was pounding. Finally, he admitted he borrowed some of the money to cover financial obligations, with the intention of replacing it. After more pushing, he confessed to using most of it to pay off gambling debts. I stayed calm with my questions while Kyle went through different emotions, being defensive, then sorry, then minimizing what he did, then blaming me, then back to being defensive. Eventually, he circled back to asking for the additional $20,000, saying this was our fresh start and the only way to fix everything. That's when I revealed my plan. I told him our conversation was being legally recorded. His parents were waiting in my bedroom, Detective June was outside, and I had documentation of everything. He didn't believe me at first. Then he got angry, saying I manipulated him. When that didn't work, he tried to leave, but I blocked the door and told him his options. 1. Sign a repayment agreement, move back with his parents, who would make sure he got help for his gambling addiction, and have his income go toward repaying me. 2. Face fraud charges with all my evidence, which would probably mean criminal charges and possible jail time. He tried to push past me. I blocked him and explained his options again. He called me psychotic and said no court would side with me, so I played back part of our conversation where he admitted using my money for gambling debts. Then he tried to grab my phone, but I stepped back and warned him that assault would only add to his charges. His behavior changed from aggressive to desperate. He asked how I could do this to him after 5 years together. I told him I've been asking myself the same question about him taking my inheritance. He claimed he really did love me in his own way. I actually believe that part. I think he really thought he could win it all back somehow. He asked if I ever truly loved him. I started crying and told him I loved him completely, which is why his betrayal hurt so deeply. At that moment, his parents came out from the bedroom where they heard everything. Kyle looked shocked. He immediately tried to explain to his parents how this was just a misunderstanding and his investments were almost successful. His parents weren't buying it. His dad told Kyle they would only help him if he signed the agreement and got help for his gambling addiction. After realizing he had no other options, Kyle signed the agreement. Detective June witnessed the whole thing. So the aftermath. Kyle moved in with his parents that night, taking just a small suitcase. His parents set strict conditions. Kyle had to surrender his credit cards, give them access to all his accounts, and agree to attend Gamblers Anonymous meetings plus therapy. His dad arranged for him to work at his company where part of his wages will go directly to me as repayment. It's been 2 weeks, and I've received the first small repayment. I'm being realistic. I may never get the full amount back. I've moved to a smaller apartment, and I'm taking on every freelance design job I can find to rebuild my finances. The weird part is discovering all the other lies Kyle told. He never actually completed his business degree. That business partner who impressed me was just Kyle's gambling buddy. All those business trips were often just gambling trips. Our entire relationship feels like it was built on lies. I have complicated feelings about all of this. I'm satisfied that Kyle is facing consequences, but I'm grieving for the relationship I thought I had, and I'm angry at myself for ignoring so many red flags. I've formed an unexpected alliance with Kyle's parents. They've been supportive. They helped me move and connected me with potential design clients. I think they feel partly responsible for not warning me about Kyle's history. I've started a support group for victims of financial abuse by partners, working with my therapist to help others recognize the warning signs I missed. I'm trying to develop stronger boundaries and address my tendency to trust too easily. I'm cautiously optimistic about my future. While I'm definitely not ready to date again, probably won't be for years, I'm focusing on rebuilding my life. I've applied for a promotion at work, and I'm considering going back to school for a design certification. My grandmother's money is mostly gone, but I think she would be proud of how I stood up for myself. According to his mom, Kyle is attending his therapy sessions and seems to be taking his recovery seriously. Living with his parents and working under his dad at 30 must be pretty humbling for someone who is always talking about his entrepreneurial spirit. I'm trying to focus on healing rather than revenge, but I can't help feeling some justice, knowing that his actions had consequences. Maybe my confrontation was the wake-up call he needed. Anyway, that's where things stand now. Thanks for all the support and advice, Reddit. I probably wouldn't have had the courage to confront Kyle without it. Edit. Some people are asking if I got a restraining order against Kyle. I didn't need to. Part of our agreement is that he can't contact me directly. All communication goes through his parents or my lawyer. Edit 2. To clarify, no, I don't feel sorry for Kyle. Addiction is a disease, but it doesn't excuse stealing $120,000 from someone you supposedly love. He had many chances to come clean and get help before it got to this point. Edit 3. For those asking about the laptop, yes, I still have it and all the evidence on it. My lawyer advised me to keep everything documented just in case. Edit 4. A few people have asked if I'm in therapy. Yes, I go twice a week now. Processing betrayal trauma is no joke, people. Edit 5. Thanks for all the kind messages. I'm honestly overwhelmed by the support. This community has been amazing.